Hello everyone and welcome to BlackShadow, and this is the comprehensive guide for how to run the TTS mod for Dune, Imperium, Uprising as well as Bloodlines. This is a guide that I haven't been in a rush to put together because the mod has seen quite a lot of changes fairly recently. I was happy to let it kind of stabilize a little bit, and there are still changes to come future on down the line. However, there isn't really a decent guide out there of how to get this all set up, how everything works, all the scripting stuff that's done, how to make the most use out of it. We've got a lot of ground to cover in this one. As such, if you're interested in particular parts of this video, like, what version of the mod to use, how leader effects are implemented, dealing with combat, anything like that, it's all timestamped in this video, so I'd encourage you to go and check out that if you're interested in specific parts, but we're going through from start to finish of how to get a game of this up and running. Now, a couple of quick caveats before we get started here. This video is going to be focusing on the 4-player variant of the game. I won't be going into detail with 3v3 mode. There are a couple of extra bits and pieces of the mod, but it's not really that much additional. Additionally, this is not going to be covering playing solo mode against House Hagal. Reason for that is because I've never done it myself, quite frankly, so I'd be kind of having to figure it out as well. It's not very often asked about House Hagal and how to do it. There are some folks that know about it more specifically. If there is a lot of interest in doing a tutorial about using House Hagal on this mod, then I can do that separately as well, because again, we've got plenty of ground to cover. And lastly, if you do find this video pretty useful, then of course, please feel free to let me know. Comment section, subscribe to the channel, all that lovely good call to action stuff that I'm usually really bad at doing. So let's get started with this tutorial. So let's start from the very beginning, and that is the main menu. First of all, if you have never used TTS before, I would encourage you to do a quick tutorial on TTS. You can do it by clicking this little button here. I think also when you first boot up the game, there's a little interface tutorial. It takes like 90 seconds, gives you the basics of how to run things, so it's ground that we don't need to cover. When you go to create the game, you'll want to be creating it either in single player mode if you're playing it by yourself, or multiplayer if you're going to be playing it online. Do not use hot seat mode. This does not work. The mod is not designed to function with this at all. The single player has its own hot seat variant integrated into the mod, so don't use hot seat. Once you've selected, you'll need to choose the mod variant. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to be mainly using the Uprising Scripted ++ version, which is available on the Steam Workshop at the moment. I will note that there is a ranked variant that is also hitting about, which is not currently on the Workshop. I'll touch upon a few Uprising-specific things at the back end of this video, but I'm going to use the Scripted ++ version for the majority of this video. So when you boot up the game, you're going to get presented something a bit like this. You'll have a large menu with all the different options of how to play the game, because there are quite a lot of them now. If you're using the Vank variant, the menu presented will be a little bit different looking, but the same kind of basic idea of what you're trying to do. So let's run through it all really super quickly. First of all, English or French is available as languages. This is courtesy of the fact that the main mod developer, Asmodeus, is from France. So there's a French version of the mod available if that's something you're so inclined. There are various extensions available to you with Uprising. You can choose to play with none whatsoever if you so desire, but you should probably play with Trome Contracts. This brings in the contract mechanic that is available in the game. Also gives access to all the leaders and all the cards, because some of them are a lot behind this mechanic, we'll say. On top of that as well, if you want to play with previous expansions to Dune Imperium Classic, you can do so with the Rise of Ix and Immortality mods. If you want to use those, click them. Also, if you want to use the old Dune Imperium cards, you can also do that. And there is a variant of using Paul Dennon's House Blend. This is a variant of the deck which Paul Dennon himself, designer of the game, created and then released on BGG. And it's basically kind of a hybrid of Uprising and classic cards put together in a particular way. It's a pretty interesting blend, and I would definitely encourage, go check it out. It's curious to see how you construct that and trying to keep deck compositions fairly decent. Next up, we'll touch upon leader drafting styles. So When Dune Imperium Classic first came out, there was actually no set way of how to draft leaders. Literally, the rulebook basically said, figure it out yourself. At least with Dune Uprising, there is a base point to work with because there are battle tokens that give out, and that determines who the first player is going to be. But we still have different various methods available to you. So you can just choose random and just let the mod decide for you. However, we also have hidden picks both in normal and reverse mode. So you've got hidden pick, which is picking from the start player, which is usually the red player, to 2 to 3 to 4. And then hidden reverse pick, which is the same but backwards, basically. I believe there's also a couple of variants of the mod that have 4-3-1-2, which is 4-3-1-2. This is a bit of a hangover from the old classic days. Regardless, choose whatever you want. Usually it's going to be reverse hidden pick. That is what is typically used on TTS Club. You've got your leader pool size as well. You can set that manually to determine if the mod will generate the size of the leader pool you'll be selecting from. So you can have it as high as you want, up to 18 with Uprising, or you can have it all the way down to 4, so you just get basically no choice whatsoever. You can also choose to tweak the leader pool if you really want to manually create your pool. Next up is players. This is also pretty straightforward. This is determining who the first player in the table is going to be. It is kind of standardized now that the first player is the red player at the seat. In the ranked version mods, this is already selected. And it's just a way of being able to kind of more easily assess in a game state kind of where the things are by standardizing the first player marker, but it's ultimately, I guess, personal preference. Randomizing players' seated positions, so it will randomize who sits where once everyone has taken their seat. And there's also this as well, the hot seat section. So this is where you get access to all of the different ways of playing the game. So if you just choose it normally, it will just set up a 4-player game as you would expect. However, you can use this to go ahead and do a House of Gold playing. You can set up 3-player, 4-player, and this is also where you set up the 2v3 mode as well. Again, the ranked version of this mod has a bit more detail and a couple of extra options of like Imperium road churn and stuff like that. Feel free to have a little browse. Lastly, with the extra bits and pieces, horizontal hands. So in the 6-player variant of the mod, the hands will appear to the sides here. However, in the 4-player version, typically we have the hands below the player board, so this is automatically put on. Formal combat phase basically just announces to the table that combat has started. Typically want to have this on just to make it a little bit clearer, and then sounds enabled, you typically have rank game as if using the ranked version of the mod. But that is basically everything going on. Except one thing that you must remember to do. You can't start the game yet. And the reason for that is because you have to take a seat at the table. It's just the way the mod is. You need to go ahead up to the top right, choose change color, and then choose, if you're a 4-player game, one of the corner seats. Playing 6-player, I think the middle ones work. And once you do that, even if you're going with hot seat mode, you can now set up the game. If you don't do that, it won't let you. It just makes sure that's why it says there. You only need to be sat in one seat to do any of the hot seat stuff. That is totally fine. So now the board is setting up here as such. And you'll see how in the 4-player mode it condenses but leaves a little bit of space if you're running the horizontal hands. So it will show up in these very useful spots here. Just makes it a little bit clearer. So, quick board tour. Let's go ahead and have a little browse of things. We'll start off with our player map areas here. So you've got the leader that you've selected, your draw and discard piles, your collection of resources. These are your agents, spies, your troops in your supply, combat strength, reveal strength when you do reveal turns, techs where if and when you buy those can go here, and then you've got contracts and a trash pile here as well. And this is where your combat tokens are indicated. Officially, they're done with combat cards in the start of the game, and then if you are to win a combat, you would then take said card to you, but we just basically use disc here just for ease of kind of showing all of that off. Then this is where you'd put your agent cards, you play your agent turns, and then this is where your hand goes when you do your reveal. Then you've got the main actual board itself. It's fairly self-explanatory. The general board space is here. A couple of the contracts are situated here for ease of access. This is the deployment area. This is the token that is winnable for whoever wins the fight. To the bottom, we have the Imperium row and the supply cards. This is where the manuals are for Uprising, the board space guides. This is also where the 6-player manual and playing solo stuff is also explained. And the Uprising Bloodlines man, I believe, is also down here on that version of the mod. And then at the top, we have, this is where the intrigues are. I believe in 6-player, the throne row is also up here. Swordmaster agents are kept up here if you haven't bought them yet. And then at the top, this is where the contract supply pool is. The game will usually pull out, but you might occasionally need to dig in there yourself. Also, various tokens. These are victory point indicators. And basically, as you play through the game, you can see here the victory point markers. There are 2 of them. This is the generic one just for the general game state, but everyone also has their own tracker on their board here as well. And as you go ahead and you get points for whatever reason, you just put them onto your tracker and that will update down here as well. So fairly straightforward, but this is all for card stuff as well. So yeah, Junction Headquarters, these are the intrigue ones and stuff like that. So with everything set up and ready to go, it's time to actually play the game that we've been wanting to this whole time and how to actually take moves. So one of the great things about this board is that it has a lot of scripting going on underneath the hood, and the idea of that is to kind of make life as easy as possible for people who play this. If you go back in this channel's archives, all the way back to the start of our Dune Imperium content, when we were back in the Artificery tournament, and we were playing with Dune, Rise of Ix, with a board that was totally manual. We had to put agents down, resolve all our own effects, keep track of all our resources and everything like that. Stuff inevitably is done wrong, things are missed, rules are broken, and that's just the nature of the beast, really. So being able to have a mod that has a lot of scripting behind it is really, really good, and a huge thanks to Asmodeus and the various other folks that have worked on the mod for this one and the previous over the course of time. So to actually do a move on this board, it's pretty self-explanatory. What you're going to need to do is, first off, choose the card that you're going to be using here. So we're going to look to go, let's go Arakeen here and draw some cards. So we're going to go ahead, put our recon down somewhere in the agent turn area to say, this is the card I'm going to use. And then to actually the agents are locked. You can't actually click them. Instead of putting the agent onto the space, you literally just click it, and it will do everything for you. So we go to Arakeen here. It will generate the troop that goes into our garrison. It will draw the card that is put into our deck. And also, very usefully, it will also produce this here as well. There's this text box at the bottom left, which keeps track of everything that's going on over the course of the game. So anytime you go to do a move, it will state what's happening, usually noting the card that you've sent there as well, which is pretty damn useful too. So you can go back here. If there's any confusion, you can log that. And so it's very useful to make sure you're doing so and doing things as per the scripting, so that if there is any confusion later on, then that can be looked at. Now, it is worth noting that while board effects are typically dealt with by the scripting, any effects by cards are not. So if we go ahead and use the normal Watermaster here and do the same thing going to Arakeen, we still get the troop, we still get the card draw, but the water on the actual card has to be done manually, and you've got to go ahead and left or right click onto these in order to adjust these as necessary. So please do keep an eye on that. Other thing also to be careful of as well is there are a couple of effects that you've also got to manually resolve, anything that resolves choice. So, for example, if we were to go to accept contract here, whoops, that's the wrong one, which lets us draw a card but also get one of these contracts. We go ahead and click that. It will note that we've done that, and that's all well and good. But the actual contract, you've got to go ahead and acquire it yourself. So if we could take the Solari contract, that's all well and cool. And the money we get from that also needs to be manually resolved. So you would click that. And then any completed contracts put into this little piles just to note how many you've done. This is good and notable for end games. There's also a couple of cards that their properties change depending on how many contracts you've completed over the course of the game. A couple of little things to note going on with agent effects is characters' signet rings. So everyone in the game, every leader has a signet ring card, which gives them a specific effect depending on who they've chosen. Much like previously, if you do send your ring as an agent, you'll need to resolve the effect manually. It is not automatically done. However, there are some leaders that actually have a little bit of scripting, and people forget about this. So Gurney Harriet, for example, has his Warmaster ability, which lets him get a troop. So what you could do, if we say go to Arakeen again here, is you can left and right click on the garrison just to put in troops manually if you so on. But there are a couple of leaders that actually let you click on the thing itself and will actually let you put in troops like this. There's only a couple. Being honest, it's nice that it's there, but it's very rarely used. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't normally use it, honestly speaking, except for one leader in particular, and that is Lady Jessica. Let me just go ahead and move myself to yellow here briefly. So Lady Jessica's abilities revolve around sending her troops basically to the Bene Gesserit via Spice Agony, and at a later point using other memories. The game actually does script this if you want to do so. So let's say we're going to send our signet ring to Imperial Base in here, for argument's sakes. So to resolve the ring effect, you can't like pick up your troops from the board. It's all locked. And equally, like that's where they come from. They go from your supply area to that. So what you can do is click on the actual area here to trigger Spice Agony. That will pay the spice, it will put the troop up there for later, and also give you the intrigue card off the deck, which is really useful. And then at some point in the game, when you've eventually decided that you've got everything you want to do, and you're ready to make the flip using the other memories ability, you can actually click other memories, and what that will do is it will make sure you're confirmed, pay the troops, return to your supply, draw your cards as the stacked up the memories, and we'll also flip your leader card as well. Really useful, really nice, and yeah, about the only leader I think realistically that this scripting is of particular use. A lot of the leaders have choices, for example, of what their ring may do, and in this situation you can't script it because you don't know what they're going to be doing. So yeah, good for Lady J. That's probably about it, really. Lastly, if you have cards which trash themselves upon use, like say Seek Allies here, and you go ahead to use it to do whatever it is that you're going to do. Once you've done these, I think these cards are scripted so that when the game clears up for the next round, that these are automatically removed from your deck. But usually, to be safe, what I usually do is once I'm done with the round's end, I'll manually go and put them into the spot here. Sometimes they don't go in easily. You got to like flip them and a couple of weird things. But yeah, put them away there, or at least out of the way of your board so that you're not worried about redrawing those. Once you're done with whatever action it is you're going to go ahead and do, you can click the end turn button here. This will pass on control of the game to the next player at the table. So now we've gone over to the green button, and everyone can keep doing that as and when they do actions. If you misclick, for example, everyone can just skip back round to the current player. It's no big deal. And once you're out completely of agent actions, you'll need to take your reveal turn. You've got this very useful little button here, so you can go ahead and click this. So if you just click here, that will put all the remaining cards down. So this will count up all of your reveal persuasions. So we've got 7, because we've got 2, 4, 5, 6, and I've got troops in the combat here with Gurney, which gives them his 7 persuasion. And then we've also got 1 sword of strength here, courtesy of the dagger. So our actual troop strength here is 2, 4, 6, plus the dagger for 1. And this is automatically counted out, which is pretty useful. Now, there is actually a second way of revealing, which was noted as we hovered over here, and that is called an extended reveal. So what this is that when you reveal, the game will count up persuasion and strength, but that's it normally. You may have cards that give you resources or other benefits available to you outside of that. And this is typically with stuff with like the Fremen, for example. The Fremen have lots of cards that will give you resources, usually via their Fremen bond. And so what you can do is you can just left click and manually resolve it if you need to for whatever reason, but you can also right click, and what that will do is not only will it give you all the persuasion, but it will automatically give you resources as well. So Watermaster has given me the 2 spies, so that's been accounted for there. Shishakli gives us a bump with the Fremen. That has not been automatically granted, however, so be careful. Some effects do, some effects don't, so some you will need to manually resolve. Just be careful about that. Also, when you do reveal, there are a couple of cards in the game that will stay in your hand, and the reason for that is because they're ores. This is to remind you that you need to decide what the card's actually going to go ahead and do. So with Desert Power, you can reveal it and add in 2 Persuasion, in which case just add in the 2 Persuasion there. Or if you're going to pay the water to get the Sandworm in, then you can do that as well with this button here, assuming you've got the hooks or whatever else. But yeah, there's a couple of cards that do that. That's why they hang in there, just to remind you that you need to decide what action it is that you're going to take. Once you've done the reveal, you then need to decide what you're going to do with any persuasion you've got. So we've got 6 stacked here. So just come down, have a look at anything you fancy, and if there's a card that you want to get hold of, hover over. You should be able to put the acquire button here, so in high places, good card for Margot. So we'll click that. That puts in the next card from the deck there, and then any cards you bought we put into the discard. Do note any acquire effects will not be resolved automatically. Usually, stuff like Spies, because you have to decide where it's going to go. But I believe anything that gives you, I think, Steersman with the Influence bump, or Price of No Object, which gives you 2 Solari. I think those are automatically given, but always just double check and make sure, because sometimes mods do things they're not meant to do. Technology is really difficult. But regardless, once you're done, you've bought everything, you're well and good, hit end turn once again, play will move on to the next player, and then once everyone has revealed and then hit end turn, that will then move you on to the next part of the game phase, the combat phase. There are a few other things I do just want to quickly cover though before we do that. So first off, there are quite a few spaces on the board that have limitations behind them, be it having to pay a resource to access it, or influence-wise that allows you any access to it whatsoever, even if you've got said resources. If you don't have the requisite resource, you try and hit a space, it will tell you that you don't have the Spies, or you won't be able to, you don't have the Solari. In the case of something like Siege, it will tell you don't have the influence either, so the game will typically stop you from doing that, which is really useful for, making mistakes, stuff like that. If you do have a card or an intrigue that lets you access a space on the board, even if you wouldn't normally have the requisite influence to reach it, like Siege to Bar, for example, you will need to just very quickly put up your influence on the track to basically pseudo give you access momentarily. So now we can go to Siege, take that, and then just put your influence back down to where it was previously. That's just the way the mod works. Usually I would explain to someone what you're going to do before you do it, because it can be very confusing. Next up are the spaces that have multiple costs to them. There's a couple of these, specifically the Spice Refinery, as well as Gather Support. So with these spaces, the rules are that you have to decide what the cost of the space is going to be when you visit it effectively. So if we go ahead and click on it, for example, we can decide if you want to play it with or without water. If you play it with the water, you've got to pay the extra money, but just be aware that you've got to, if you've got the resources, it will allow you to do that. What you can also do as well, if you want to skip this prompt, is you can just click on this particular part of the board exactly. So we can go here, for example, and that will automatically pay the 2 Solari down here for the water and the troops, and those are automatically added into our garrison like so. Next thing to talk about is going to be Spies. This is a mechanic involved in the game. There are these various outposts here, and you can put Spies. These allow you access to agent locations, even if they've been blocked, but alternatively, they can be expended when you visit for an additional card draw. So the way that this is resolved depends on how you approach it. So let's say that we're going to send Watermaster here over to Arakeen. If it's the case, when you go to the space, if you just left-click it, and the space is open and not currently occupied, the game will ask if you want to recall a spy to draw a card. It's up to you. It is not mandatory unless you're playing as Mother Baheim for Bloodlines, and you can choose either yes to do so or no, you don't want to. Spy recalls has to be resolved before any other agent action, so this is important if you're going to a place like, let's say, Desert Tactics. You say you want to trash your discard, but you got a spy there, and if pulling that spy would cycle your deck around, you can't do the trash the discard first. You must resolve the spy effect. That's a rule of the game. If you choose no, that's fine. The game will just send your agent there, and it will resolve that, and that's all well and good. However, if you decide that you do want to spend it, then you can obviously do that and hit yes. Alternatively, what you can also do is, I didn't actually realize I was going to do that. What you can do is you can actually right-click the space, and basically what will happen with the mod is that, and the way to treat it, if you're not intending to use a spy with a space that you have got a spy, left-click with your mouse. If you're intending to use the spy for whatever reason, right-click. And if you right-click, it automatically resolves it, whether that is pulling the extra card for recalling the spy normally, or whether that is for infiltrating the space because there's another agent there. That's the easy way to do it. Left-click if you're not going to use a spy, right-click if you are. And that covers pretty much every eventuality. Extra thing I'll note as well, with contracts, and you acquire these, if you go to a space which lets you acquire and complete them, when you go to do that, it will state in the text box down here, field contract Arakeen water. However, you still need to manually resolve that. It will not give you the water for it yourself. You've still got to manually go ahead and put it in and complete the contract. So try and make sure that you're not forgetting that. So next thing for us to talk about is going to be makers and worms. This is one of the big mechanics that was brought in with Uprising, bringing in sandworms into combat to help fight conflicts better, but also doubling the rewards that you would get from the conflict as well. Very, very powerful. Once you've got to Siege and you've got hold of your hooks, then whenever you decide to go to a valid maker space, i.e. Hagar Basin and Deep Desert, when you go ahead to click on the space, the game will ask if you want to summon someone or take the Spice units. Alternatively, again, as well, you can click on either the Spice spot here or the Worm spot in order to kind of circumvent that and just get on with with that sort of thing. If it is a conflict, of course, that is red like this, you can summon Sandworms. If it is a conflict that is yellow, like this one, sandworms are not allowed to be called in, and the game will not let you do so unless the shield wall is blown up. And if you do this via this agent effect here, you can do it with Siege automatically, but if you do it via an intrigue or a card effect, you can just click on the wall, you say that you do not want to obey the reforms of the Great Convention, get it blown up, and rock and roll there. Always nice that. Cheers, Jean-Luc. So yeah, once that's blown up, that is gone, completely removed. But yeah, if you're trying to get into a fight, otherwise it won't let you put worms in. And people still do that. Do it all the time. People will go to Hagar Basin with the wall up to put worms in, like, oh wait, I can't do that. It's amazing. The game's been out for what, like about 18 months at this point or something like that. Everyone still does it. It's just a thing. So let's look at combat in a quick more detail here. So as noted, strength for the units in the combat are automatically added to the tracker here. Technically, this isn't rule, but it's just for convenience sakes, quite frankly. So you've got 2 strength for your troops, 3 strength for your worms, and then any dags on reveal will be added at the end. Bear in mind, there are other things as well that might give you effects within reveals or combat turns. Reveals usually are allocated, but if you give any combats that give you, or any intrigues give you combat strength, you'll need to manually add it to your marker here as well. A couple of things you can do as well is that if you want to pretty up the board, say it looks really messy, you can drag to highlight everything. If you hold them, you can then press your top of your keyboard in order to kind of like group them a bit better, because some people don't like units being all over the place. It can be a bit confusing, so you can kind of make it a little bit nicer. Careful about adding them in with stuff like worms. It can space them out a bit weirdly because it's just a bigger object. Also, as noted as well, if you are adding or removing troops manually, you can left click on your garrison to bring them in. Again, it will come up with a log in the box here. Likewise, if you need to remove them for whatever reason, an intrigue, an effect, whatever's going on, you can move them back as well, stuff like that, and the mod will do everything for you there. Pretty nice. Okay, so next up, let's look at how battle works in this. Again, once all players have revealed and hit in turn, the game will take you, assuming you selected it, to a full battle phase. Hang on, phase combat, as noted here. So the way the game works is that starting with the first player marker, the board, you go clockwise basically, and anyone that has an intrigue has the option of whether or not they want to go ahead and play it. If you do, just pull the intrigue out and add the swords as required, or do whatever effect it is that you're doing, and then go ahead and hit end turn. The mod will detect if there's a player in combat that doesn't have any intrigues. It just skips them automatically here, and once everyone has passed in combat without playing an intrigue and everyone's hit in turn, it will then go to reclaiming rewards over here, and then this is where you then sort it out. So then everyone gets the opportunity to collect the rewards that's going on. So if hit reclaim, Gurney Hallett won the fight here, so he's going to get 2 loads of the first place markers. Hit reclaim. Most of it is scripted. So it gives him 2 loads of 2 spice there, 2 loads of the troops there. It also gives him the battle marker that was here. And that has now been allocated. Ignore that. Don't worry about that. It will give him the marker to his board automatically. If you get 2 of the same, it will then remove those and add the victory point there. So it does that for you, which is super nice. Also, if the combat was for a flag, the game will automatically put the flag down for you there as well, which is pretty useful. If there's anything that's like a optional reward, however, in regards to, say, the skirmish, the wild bump, you've got to allocate that yourself. Also, as well, if you decide to do anything that has a cost on it, you'll also need to manually resolve that, but there will be additional victory points for you to claim, usually here. Again, just probably explain what you're doing to the table, just so it's clear for everyone and no one's getting confused. So yeah, once first player is resolved, goes to end turn. It now goes to the second player. He gets his rewards, which is the water, spice, and troop. Third place then gets their reward, spice, and the troop. They click end turn. And then we go back to recall here. Everything gets cleaned up. Any maker spaces that have spice added onto them gets done. Player moves on to the first player, and you're off to the next round again. Everything is really scripted, really nice and clean. You don't have to really do any work. Cards are automatically put down into discard piles. There's any redraws up to 5. That's done as well. So really, really useful. But that is basically how you run this mod. It is, at the same time, a little complicated, but also incredibly simple. It's just a case of getting familiar with it. Everyone has to do a first game on this mod, and everyone is a bit slow the first time around. There's no issue with that whatsoever. Just take everything step by step. Make sure that you're just kind of clear of what you're doing. This isn't a race. There's no advantage to rushing movements and rushing effects. You're only going to confuse other people, or in fact, you might even confuse yourself and start missing effects you've got resolved manually. So there's no need to rush about it at all. Just go ahead, run through it, and just take it slow. And odds are, especially if you're playing by TTS club, there is going to be someone at the table who is going to have some familiarity with the mod as well. So if you've got any questions about how things work, they can guide you through it. Okay, so next up, I'm going to talk about Bloodlines specifically, and the mod that we use for that, as there are some extra bits and pieces that are noted for Bloodlines that are not relevant if you're just playing general Uprising. For the record, this is version 1.3.18 of the board, which by the time this video comes out is probably going to be out of date, but what you're going to go ahead and do. So there are a variety of leaders with Uprising that have more specific effects that need to be resolved, especially resolving at the start of the game. So I'm just going to go and show you how these are worked if you choose them. So let's go ahead and get these selections here. So the game will recognize the game start if there are things that need to be resolved, and it will go ahead and do so. So let's go from very quickly. Steersman Yukun has these plot course. So he has a deck of 10 cards. When you select him, it will randomly draw 5 of them into your hand like this. And what you'll need to do is set your course of cards. So as you hit factions, you get your friendships, you'll be able to reveal these effects to be able to do good stuff. So all you're going to do basically is in your hand, because at the moment no one can see it. For everyone else, it's face down. Basically work out what the order of cards is that you want to go ahead and use. It's up to you. And then when you're ready to go, put them to the top here, flip them with F, put them face down, and then just put them up one at a time. Whatever order it is that you decide you want to do them, that's all well and good. And once you're done with that, hit end turn, and that is saying that you're done with that, and we can move on with the next part of the game. Next up, we've got Kota of Ix. So her game start ability revolves around the tech piles that have been reintroduced to the game with Bloodlines. I'll get more into techs in a short moment, but the way to resolve her ability is she peaks at the bottom of the 3 stacks of techs, and you basically choose one of those you want to keep. So this is how you do it. First off, you're going to take the 3 techs that are on the top of the piles, move them off manually, try to keep them in order so you know which one was on what pile. And then what you're going to do is hover over one of these decks here. And what you're going to do is you're going to hit Alt, which lets you view it in a more zoom form. And you're going to hold that and press Shift. This will show you what is at the bottom of that pile. So we know that this one's got navigation check, for example. So everyone else, when you're doing this, it will come up with this little eye symbol, which shows that you're peeking underneath the deck. So have a look at all 3 of them. So that one's got Suspensor Suits, and then this one has Ornithopter Fleet. Once you've decided which one it is that you want, we're going to go for Suspensor Suits for the purpose of this. Pick up the stack by holding left, and then move it off probably to the side for a moment. And then what you're going to do is you're then going to press Alt, and then right-click, and this will drop the bottom item of that pile of whatever it is that you're holding off there. So if we now put this back here, we'll see that this is indeed the Suspensor suits. So go ahead, put that on your player area, whatever you want to do face down. People tend to put it over here because this area with scripting in turn will auto-flip text, including this one that you might not have. So just be careful about that, and then just go ahead and put these back on the top of the areas as you've done so, and that's all lovely, well and good. Pyre de Vries also has a game start ability, but it's already resolved for you. Don't you worry about it. And that he draws his Twisted Intrigues in his hand. The game will put the pile of Twisted Intrigues down here, and at the start of every round, it will then draw one into your hand automatically, so you don't have to worry too much about that. So yeah, it's just mainly Kota and Steersman that are the two awkward ones. Also, however, there are a variety of leader effects that also need to be resolved carefully as well. One of those is Gaius Mahayim. So her clandestine ability means that whenever she sends an agent to a space with one of her spies, she has to recall that to gather intelligence, whether you, even if you didn't infiltrate. Now, it is worth noting that if you do decide to go ahead and do so, and you still happen to left-click, the game does not currently script this part of the ability. It might do so at some point in the future in this video. We have asked for this to be done. But for the time being, it is possible for you to go to a space and ignore that rule. If you do notice someone doing that, or if you catch it yourself, just say, oops, my bad. And you can always just, manually pull the spar off yourself and then just resolve the card draw and just say, my bad. It is easy to forget. Everyone's done it. But yeah, just bear in mind the clandestine at time of recording is not automatically revolved. So a couple other leader abilities just to go over here as well. Esmar Tuek brings along with him a new board space into the game, 2x Siege. Now, his space is located down here underneath the Imperial Basin. It's already scripted in as normally, so if he was to send an agent to himself, he'd get the coin. If an opponent goes, he gets the intrigue. It's all scripted in. So you don't need to worry anything about that. The one thing I would say, just be slightly careful of, however, if you're using this version of the mod, is that if Tuek is not available, the space isn't here, but the scripting still is, and you can still technically send an agent to Exceed even though it's not on the board. So just be a little careful about that. The scripting is not currently removed if Tuek is not in the game. Next up, we've got Liet Kynes, an Arrakis planetologist. So Liet Kynes is unique in Bloodlines in that she cannot summon any Sandworms in the game. She also is able to ignore needing the influence clients in Siege Tabber, and both of these are recognized in the game. If you decide to go to the Siege in the GS9 influence, the game will let you do that when it loads there. Very useful. Also, when you go to a maker spot here, the game again will recognize that it's Liet Kynes specifically. It will note if you go to send the Sandworm here that she hates the maker. And it will resolve getting the intrigue for you and the spies. The trash you'll need to resolve manually, however, but as that is obviously your option. But nice to know that that is already allocated for in the mod. And the last leader I want to make a note of is Chani as well as Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen. Both of them have personal player tracks on their cards and are denoted with these little white cubes. As you expect, as these get resolved, you'll need to go ahead and manually adjust these yourself. So keep an eye on those, whether it's Feyd with his ring and his personal training, or you're doing it with Chani and the Federica maneuvers, perhaps to get her retreats and stuff going on. If you want more details about her retreat mechanics, how exactly it works, because there are some weird kind of little bits of it, I won't explain it here, but self-plug alert, I will be doing the top 5 series of all the Bloodlines leaders, so I'll be talking about Chani and the more kind of the minutiae of how her retreat mechanic works, because there are some weird bits and pieces to it. But yeah, you'll need to go ahead and manually resolve this yourself, including any resources that's on you to resolve. So next for us to look at is Commanders and Techs. These are the two big mechanics that are brought in with Bloodlines to feature with Uprising. We'll do Commanders first. Commanders are additional troops that have access to extra abilities, and you can see they are denoted various spaces across the board. If you wish to go ahead and hire one by visiting a space here, then when you go ahead and send an agent to the relevant space, for example, what you'll need to do is click on the commander, and it will ask if you want to recruit. It will cost you a couple of Solari. Go ahead and click yes. that commander will now be allocated directly into your supply. And also, once a conflict resolved where you've gone ahead and used the commander, they will then be added into this little section underneath here, as they'll be in supply for you to head and recruit later on. Do you remember, of course, when you go ahead and recruit commanders, you will need to pick up a relevant skill. Let's go with Driven, for example. Those will be put over here. Keep them however you so desire. And just bear in mind that, keep them on display so you don't forget what things do. If you're recruiting a commander from your own personal supply and instead of off the board, click the start of commander ±1 here in the garrison, and that'll do it. Obviously, I don't have any, however, so don't worry about that. Now, the actual skills of the commanders are implemented into the mod, but there are a couple of tricky cases you've just got to be a little bit careful of here. So, for example, we have a Charney, we've got the commander and 2 troops, and we've got 8 combat strength because we have an agent in the council area here, which means that Canny is currently triggered. So we've got 8 strength in total. If we go ahead and reveal, we'll do an extended reveal here. We will get the troop for Hardy, and we also get the Spies there from Driven. Those are added in automatically. And we get the sword as well from the dagger here. Now, be careful with some of these sword effects, however. So, Canny is not a reveal effect. And this is where the command skills are a little bit tricky. Some of them are and give you automatically. So if we were to retreat our troop here, for example, like Matuli does, we get to keep the persuasion, any of these resources there. However, Canny is no longer active because our commander is not in battle anymore. So not only do we lose the commander strength, we also lose the 2 swords from Canny, and that is how the rules work. However, with a card like, say, Desperate, if you decide to trash this on your reveal turn for the 3 swords, and then that gets trashed, and then you decide you're going to retreat your commander for whatever reason, those swords do remain because it was a reveal turn effect. It's just the way the skills are. There's another one as well, Fierce as well. If you have no commanders in combat, this doesn't do anything either. It's just kind of the way that the rules work. Same for Loyal as well. If you have no commanders in the combat at any point, those swords are lost altogether, and that's just the way the rules work. So it is implemented correctly. It's just a little fiddly, we'll say. So next up, let's talk about techs. These make their return from Rise of Ix. However, they are implemented in a little bit differently. Techs are acquirable, usually when you go to any one of the Landrad's council spaces over here, and obviously some card effects and other bits and pieces. If you want to go ahead and get out of a tech, just sort of an unusual time, you can just go ahead and click to acquire. The game will ask you if you're going to acquire it, you've got to pay it manually. However, the game will typically recognize if you've gone to a council spot normally. So if you go to gather support, for example, I don't have any agents left. Give me one of those back. It's from earlier on. So if I go to just get some troops here, if we then go to look to get hold of a tech, let's say server receivers, we can click that. The game recognizes that we've gone to a valid spot, and we'll just automatically go ahead and give that to you, and that is much appreciated. However, another part of the rule is that if you have the High Council seat, techs cost 1 spice less, and yes, the mod does also account for that as well. So if you go to High Council here, and then we say, let's go ahead and get hold of Ornithopter Fleet, for example, the game will pay only 3 spice instead of 4, and also stuff like troops and such will be automatically garrisoned for us as well. So not everything is done. Again, anything like a trash, or if you're getting a contract, something like that, there are some things that you need to resolve manually because it's a choice of how you want to implement them, but the majority of these are manually done. And as noted as well previously, if you have a tech, for example, that requires you to flip it, just press F to flip it to note you've used it and do whatever else, and then when you start the next round, it should flip them all back up, phase up, assuming that everything is working nice and fine. But yeah, the techs are pretty well implemented, and you can't really go wrong. One last thing to talk about quickly is the command effects. This is also introduced in Bloodlines. There are some cards that will give you additional benefits if you have 6 or more persuasion on your reveal. And these are, as far as I know, also coded into the mod. So if you go ahead and do a reveal turn here and do it extended, you will get the various resources here. So we get 3 Solaris and 2 Spice, courtesy of Southern Faith and Bombast. Bombast will need to be manually trashed, however. But outside of that, yeah, you'll be able to get all your bits and pieces, and that's all lovely, well and good. Just make sure you're doing that extended reveal typically, so that resources aren't missed. There might be the odd occasion that you want to do things in a particular order. If so, go for it. But typically speaking, extended reveals are pretty much the way to go. So last bit for this is a few useful short keys for how to use the mod effectively. So if at any point, if you want to, if you hit the question mark key on your keyboard, it should bring up this menu here, and this will give you just some loose ideas of what different commands can do. So you can use P to change between your camera. Occasionally your camera looks really weird and how it moves across. You can use P to reset that. You can obviously pan of WSD. There's lots of basic stuff here, but there are some also very useful specific commands I'll quickly talk about with you right now. So let's go starting with hands, and that is something that I personally don't like using. Some people do. Is that you can have a hand preview down here. I don't like using it. You can use the H button to hide that or make that disappear. Another useful little thing you can do as well is when you're drawing stuff in the game, be it cards or inches, whatever else, you can just do it one at a time by clicking. However, you can also, if for whatever reason you're doing more than one at the same time, you can actually click the numbers at the top of your keyboard. So here, let's say I've got both my spies out. I can hit 2 on the deck, and it will draw both of them there, just to stop repetitive clicking, especially if you're going through like really busy stuff, because sometimes turns get really messy. Just a little bit cleaner doing it that way. A couple other little things that might be useful as well. If you go ahead and hit the tab button anywhere on the board, you can ping the board here. So some players will do this to kind of note something of particular importance, whether it means like they'll put an entry down saying, okay, I'm now doing intelligence report. So rather than type it out, we'll just ping it to say, this is my next action. Also, it might be where like someone tries to go, for example, trying to put worms in on a worm comment. They'll say, excuse me, buddy, what you doing? I don't think that's a legal move there, and stuff like that as well. If you hold tab, it will then bring up this ruler instead. What this officially is actually for in TTS is if like D&D games and games where you need to, which you have to like manually work out ranges of things to do effects and stuff like that. However, we do use it as a general, as kind of like an identifier. So let's say if I was using an effect, let's say the Southern Faith and using the bump, what I might do is I might get that and then I might draw a line to the bench that's saying I'm using that part of the card effect and then taking the bump there, for example. It's also useful just for demonstrations to, for whatever reason you need to do. Very useful little tool there. A couple of things you can also do as well if you need to look at the board, because you're normally looking at this and it can be a bit hard to see what the hell's going on. So you can use M to magnify an area around your mouse. You can also use the scroll wheel if you just need to look a little bit more detail at something that is like generally on the board. If you want to look at a card more specifically, you can use Alt to bring up this preview. And as noted, if you use Alt and Shift, you can look at the underside of a deck or a card for whatever reason. You need to go ahead and do that. It's a thing that some things need you to do. Also, if you do want to right-click a deck, there's a variety of things you can do. You can randomly shuffle with pressing R if you need to. You can also search for your deck. You can click search here, and it will give you this preview of everything that's in the deck here. This is useful if you're digging through like a big discard pile, if you're looking to trash something rather than just putting the cards to the side. Do be warned, however, if you do it with a draw deck, is that it will show the cards in the order that they are drawn, and this is the reason why you're not allowed to look at your draw pile normally on Tabletop Simulator, because it is not random. Dune Imperium Digital, for example, has the feature, but it is randomized. But here, it is not. So unfortunately, that is why that is not allowed. A couple of things you can do as well if you need to. If something's moving around, you can press like L to lock something in place if it's something you need to really do. And then you're obviously using your scroll wheel to move up and down, WSC to move, and there's a couple of bits and pieces. But again, like if there's anything else, odds are this is going to probably cover you, whatever it is you need to do. Last couple of things I'll actually mention as well. If you hold Control and F1 and F2, you can hide and or make appear these menus here. So this is obviously the general option. You need to go ahead and load a game. This is your toolbar for doing like text box on the ground, anything like that. This really isn't necessary for this mod. It's all scripted in, so typically you can just hide all that away quite nicely. But that is pretty much everything that you could possibly want to know about this mod in order to play this. I say it's There's a lot going on, and it does take a run or two to just get a little used to it. But once you've got that familiarity, it's usually pretty smooth. And yeah, like all in all, they've done a really, really good job of this. I do know there are plans to incorporate the old XIMO variant of the board into this mod more directly down the line. I don't think there's any particular time frame with that. And there might obviously be some tweaks down the line of how certain things work, and if there's any new expansions brought in as well. Obviously, this is going to be a product of when this was recorded, but I can't see the way the board works particularly changing that much at this point in time, and that's pretty much it. So thank you much for watching. Yeah, it's one of those videos that it's just do a tutorial, that'd be pretty easy, and then you get into it and you realize just how many things there are to talk about. And I've even gone into a couple of things, like you can go into black GM mode, so if you need to get access to the toolbar or anything that's gone missing, you can do that. There's also a thing as well where it's not so relevant nowadays, but if you have two of the same symbol and you need to go ahead and give you a point, you can kind of like, you hold it over and you like kind of like right click over it, and it's I'm not very good at this, but there's a way of basically making it so that it kind of gives you the point. And it kind of adds them together, but I'm really bad at it, and as you can see, so I just generally just do it all manually and just grab a token or whatever I need and just do it that way. It's just, I'm just really terrible at it. Is what it is. Anyways, that is definitely going to do it for this video. I've gone on way too long, quite frankly. So yeah, thank you for watching and listening. Hope this is useful. Again, there is probably going to be a couple little minor things that I have missed out. If so, chuck them in the comment section below, just for future reference. But yeah, that should be plenty enough for you to be able to play a game of Dune Imperium Uprising on Tabletop Simulator. And yeah, hopefully you guys will have found this useful and go ahead and enjoy some games. Thank you much for watching and listening, everyone. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you all very, very soon.